I do not regret my hair transplant, but there are parts of it that I genuinely hate, even 9 years later. See, hair transplant is not just sunshine and rainbows. And although hair transplant companies might tell you otherwise, I'm all about honesty and transparency on this channel. And so let me tell you this. If you are new to Let's Get Hair, my name is Matt Dominance. I'm the guy living with a hair transplant, fighting hair loss fight, as many of you guys, visiting hair transplant clinics worldwide, interviewing surgeons, attending top hair transplant conferences, and on this channel I help you save money, stress, and time trying to figure out what is the right hair transplant clinic for you and what is the safe hair transplant strategy. And now the number one thing I hate about my hair transplant is this. It's morning of the day, you have been waiting for so long, they're designing your hairline, and after you're 100% sure about its final shape, you are ready to go. And what absolutely sucks is to get ready for this. Be ready to sit in the operation chair for 6 to 8 hours if it's a small case, or up to 12 hours if it's a big mega session. Another part of the big day is the local anesthetic. This is the part that tends to worry a lot of guys, and I'm not going to lie now if I say the pain depends greatly on who is doing it and how it's being done. I had 3 hair transplants, 1 correction surgery, and 1 beard transplant, so I was fully numbed 5 times the way you'd normally see it. And my pain experience was like this. See, numbing can be done fast or it can be done slow. My first time was fast. Within 3 to 4 minutes, I was numbed. However, studies show that faster injection raises local tissue pressure and distension, which on the other hand activates your pain fibers. So remember, slow means less pain. And that was the case with my second and third hair transplant, and also beard transplant and corrective hair transplant surgery. The numbing was done by a surgeon. It was done slowly over 5 to 10 minute period, injecting lower volume of lidocaine per injection, and that led to causing smaller tissue distension. And after all that I have experienced so far, I would always prefer the slower numbing option. But people have different pain thresholds. A 5 out of 10 pain for one guy can be 7 to 8 out of 10 pain for another guy. Now, often you can also opt for the oral sedation option, which can help you relax and almost fall asleep. And in such case, it feels almost as hitting the fast forward button. I've never done that myself, but spoken to many guys who did that, and their experience was pretty good with that. I prefer to watch live music performances or some TV shows. So I'm not the type of guy who would want to fall asleep anyways. The second thing I hate is the post-op recovery over the first 7 to 10 days. Here's exactly what I hate. First, you need to sleep in an elevated position. You stack several pillows on top, so you get almost like 45 degrees, and then you're almost sleeping in an sitting position. I recommend you to also lean onto a wall so you get that support, and that will keep you up to avoid swelling and more bleeding. And also it will help you avoid waking up in the morning randomly flat and then endangering your graft. As far as graft safety post-op, there is one study from Dr. Bernstein and Rassman from 2006 who were looking at when the grafts are actually safely anchored in the recipient area. And here's what they found out. Trying to pull the grafts out on the day 0, 1, and 2 always resulted in losing the grafts. But by day 6, pulling the graft no longer dislodged the graft. But be careful, they found out that pulling an adherent scab on the day 5 still resulted in dislodging the graft underneath as well. So keep your hands off of the recipient area for the first week. And by day 9, all grafts were reported no longer at risk of being dislodged in their testing protocol. Swelling can be also managed easily by anti-swelling pills or also using massages regularly right after the surgery, but the degree of swelling also depends on the size of the procedure. The more grafts you get, the more swelling you tend to get. I had way more swelling on my first hair transplant, which was 3,500 grafts, than the other transplants of sub 1,000 grafts. And that also has something to do with how much saline, how much tumescent anesthetic they will inject into your recipient zone, and then once it starts to go down, it will create the swelling. The thing number 3 that I really hate is itching. With all of my hair transplants, I've always experienced the worst itching in the first week, the second week as well, and then it was more comfortable. But at least the good thing after the second week mark, when the scabs are gone, you can at least gently pat on it and slightly massage it as well, and nothing will happen to the graft. So the discomfort for me was quite bad, and that really taught me to be zen and do not resist the moment and just let the itch happen. But if you cannot do that, use the saline spray, and then after the day 7, 8, when the grafts are safe, you can do slight tapping, and that will at least relieve about 30% to 40% of the itch. It's not gonna go completely away, but it's the best you can do in the first days. Number 4. As many of you guys, I hate the fact that hair transplants need to be maintained with hair loss treatments. Some of the most respected hair surgeons I know suggest either oral finasteride, topical finasteride, oral minoxidil, or oral dutasteride. Using finasteride is what I prefer to use because my hair responds best to it. Finasteride also helps my hair transplant last me a long time. So if you are in the US, you can also check out ULO to see if any of their formulations and hair loss management options might be right for you, and then get an appointment and prescription with one of their telehealth doctors. It is not your only option, but I choose to support them because I believe in a high customization approach they have with their oral or topical solutions. What's most important though is that you are protecting your hair transplant investment and your hair is looking great and strong long term. Personally, I like to switch between topical and oral finasteride throughout the year. That's where my body feels the best, when I microdose. This is another reason why it is best to start treatments before you actually get a hair transplant to see if it's even something for you or not, because you want to get comfortable with it before you invest all of your money into a hair transplant and also go through the whole surgical and recovery process. Here's the thing number 5 that I really hate, and I still can remember how it felt for the first time. It was the day 10 when my scabs fell out and I could finally feel my fresh hair, the new hair, popping through like fresh grass in the spring, seeing my new hairline. But what came after that was the shed. Believe it or not, the ugly duckling phase is the inevitable part, and we can hate it as much as we want. It is part of the process. What's happening is that by relocating the follicles from the back and sides into the top, you are triggering a telogen phase in most of these follicles, and so they will start falling out, but only the hair shaft, the dead part, not the follicle. The dermal papilla, the part that produces the new follicle, will stay anchored underneath. By some guys, the new hair can start falling out already after 7 days. With me, it was usually between the week number 4, 5, and 6, where 80 to 90% of my hair fell out during my first, second, and third hair transplant. I usually kept wearing beanies or hats whenever I went out, but it was mainly during my first hair transplant where the shed made me look the worst, as it was a big surgery of 3,500 grafts. With my second and third hair transplant, I did the no-shave method, which made it more easier for me to camouflage the areas with my existing hair. Now, if you see something like this, don't panic. These may seem like hair follicles with their roots that fell off, but no, these are basically dead grafts that are detached from the dermal papilla part already. So the part that produces new hair is underneath and it's safe. And here the rule of thumb is, as long as you don't see any blood come out as well, your grafts are going to be fine. Getting a hair transplant nowadays is being portrayed as a very easy, simple, and straightforward process of booking the surgery, having it done. Yes, if you choose an average clinic, you can have it done quickly, but for you guys who want to get the best quality, you want to get the best surgeon, you start researching into that matter and you realize, damn, there is a big difference between the best and the average. The doctor will likely be highly involved in the surgery. He will do extraction, he will do incisions, he might do even implantation. That means how many surgeries can he do per year? Probably 150 to 250 if he's doing 3 to 5 a week. That means you prepare everything, you take the time off from work, you are ready to pull the trigger, and then you realize, damn, my surgeon who I really like he's not even available until next year. And that's the point that I and many other guys hate, because they realize it's not as easy and quick to have your surgery done by the best surgeon. For these types of surgeons who are artists, who are highly involved in the surgery, the minimum wait time is usually from 2 to 3 months, 4 to 6 months on average, and by some surgeons even 12 months and longer. So make sure you plan your hair transplant in advance. Don't be the guy who books a flight to Turkey and then he's stuck in Istanbul and then randomly tries to freestyle his way into a random clinic. That's the most dangerous thing you want to do, because the places that are available on such a short notice are usually the mass production factory clinics. And number 7, you will have to travel for your hair transplant surgery if you want the best quality for your specific case. Maybe you need a high Norwood class specialist who uses small punches. Maybe it's an afro hair specialist where the extraction has to be done especially slow. It needs to be done by the doctor, running the micromotor on the low oscillation and low rotation speeds. Maybe you need a fine hair specialist, body hair specialist, or the surgeon who can do that ultra high density. And on top of that, he's also ideally an artist who can create the max naturalness and undetectable result. I research hundreds of surgeons worldwide, and there are only a few dozens that I would trust. So it is unlikely such guy will be next to your door. I personally had to travel for my hair transplants, and I used a different doctor for every surgery because each time my needs were slightly different. Hairline repair, midsection touch-up, without shaving, manual FUE, and high surgeon involvement in all of those cases. So the last point I really hate is that finding a really good hair transplant surgeon for your needs is not as easy as finding a good dentist or general practitioner who might be just next door. So if you like this video, check out my must-watched hair transplant playlist if getting hair transplant safely and the best possible quality are your goals. See you there.